You already know what time it is. It is Saturday, which means we are talking about prospects from last year's NHL Draft. I honestly feel pretty proud of myself because we have been consistently going throughout this Saturday, Wednesday, 1 year later schedule. You know how hard it is for me to make videos on a particular schedule and actually stick to it? Yeah, it's a pretty big challenge. So the fact that we've been able to do it this far, hey, I like it. And the reception has been pretty good too, so thank you all for the feedback on these videos. But today we are talking about yet another player who was drafted in the 2022 NHL Entry Draft. We're going to go over his story, go over his profile from last year, and talk about how things took a pretty bad turn. No, do we want to say bad? Let's just say not ideal turn as the season 22-23 went along. We're heading over to the 2022 NHL Entry Draft and talking about the player taken by the Montreal Canadiens at the end of the first round. This was a pretty interesting pick because this was the pick the Canadiens got from the Tyler Toffoli Calgary Flames trade. Conditional first round pick 2022, it ended up becoming 26th overall. And with this pick, the Montreal Canadiens went with a very interesting selection. Filip Mesar, out of the Poprad team in the Slovak League. Now, immediately, right off the bat, a lot of Canadiens fans, once this pick was made, they said, hey, this is another Slovak player. Very interesting, seeing how the Canadiens had the first overall pick, they drafted Slovak winger Juraj Slafkovský, and 25 picks later, they took another Slovak winger, this time in Filip Mesar. Now, this made for a very good story. You saw Mesar and Slafkovský hugging it out with Simon Nemec, top picks from Slovakia, all taken in the first round of the 2022 draft, and then, of course, the other guys were taken top 2, 1 and 2. But, depending on who you ask, some would say that Mesar was a bit of a reach, others would say he was a pretty good steal at this range, mostly because if you take a look at the scouting outlets at the time, Elite Prospects had him at 36, Future Considerations at 30, Craig Button had him at number 59, so a lot lower there. McKenzie also had him at 30, but then you had McKeans, who actually had him ranked number 16th on their list. So, depending on who you ask, Filip Mesar at number 26 was around right where he was supposed to go, maybe just a tad earlier. Part of the reason he was valued so highly by outlets like McKean's, though, is highlighted in this scouting report. The Slovak winger just flies out there, weaving through traffic with a crossover-heavy stride, changing lanes and speeds to throw defensemen off balance, and exploding away from contact with forceful weight transfers. He's an absolute force between the blue lines, and one of the draft's best transition forwards. The next item on the list is Mesar's handling skill. The mechanical base is sound, with his hands operating independently of his feet, the puck in his hip pocket, and his top hand pushed out for full range of motion, and he dekes past opponents with quickness, precision, and agility. Simply put, Filip Mesar has moves. This also was exemplified by his play in the Slovak League, where in 37 games played for Poprad, he had himself 16 points, 8 goals, and 8 assists. He also was under a point per game for that team in the postseason. Now that's a really good number, all things considered. He's 17, 18 years old, playing in the top league in his country. There's a lot to be valued out of young players who succeed and actually find producing roles above their junior competition. They are in the Pro Men's League in Slovakia. He also suited up for Team Slovakia at the U18s, getting 12 points and 7 games played throughout different international tournaments. A very good showcase point production-wise there. If you wanted a bigger report as to what Mesar does well and why he was taken so high in the draft, Sebastian High back in July of 2022 writes this on Dobber Prospects, that Mesar, despite being an undersized winger, by the way, we didn't actually talk about this, he's 5'10", 176 right-handed right-wing player. So, not the biggest guy, but we know the Montreal Canadiens have had success with sub-6 feet players in the past, especially up at forward. But Sebastian High writes this, that he may be undersized, but he still attempts to get physically involved, which should become more effective as he fills out his frame and more importantly adds lower body strength. Mesar is an excellent puck carrier in transition. This would further improve if he learns to incorporate east-west movement as a puck carrier. His current north-south style is relatively predictable. Offensively, Mesar is very intelligent, his off-puck movement is calculated and allows him to get into open areas, while his playmaking is a real weapon. He uses his hands and agility to draw defenders' attention, change the angle of attack, and open up passing lanes which he's quite capable of exploiting to create high-danger scoring chances. The only element of Mesar's game that makes his NHL projection a question mark is his ability to consistently attack the middle, which is directly linked with his physicality. So, all things considered, Filip Mesar was a very strong two-way forward with a great playmaking edge that produced well against men and had a pretty interesting profile at 26th overall. However, 1 year after the fact, and things aren't looking all too amazing for Mesar. They're still there and they're still good, but they may not be in the same light as they were last year. And here's why. This comes mostly from Filip Mesar and his OHL production. You see, he had played with the Laval Rocket, he had a game played there, but spent the entire 22-23 season in the OHL, where, playing for the Kitchener Rangers, he had 51 points in 52 games played. He also had 4 points in 9 games in the playoffs, which, if you're doing the math here, this was a first-round guy taken last year. He's 18, 19 years old for the whole season, and he's not even a point per game in the OHL. Let alone in the postseason when the games matter the most. He actually had himself a bottom 6 role with the Rangers as the team pushed further into the postseason, and that, in and of itself, is kind of a red flag as to the development and the path that Mesar has exhibited so far in the OHL. Now sure, he did play for Team Slovakia at the World Juniors and was over a point per game there, which is awesome to see, especially since he's only a recently drafted player, but his league play is where things definitely took a bit of a turn when it comes to the perceptions of this guy. Even if we go back over to Dobber Prospects and read some of the 2023 reports, these are written by Aaron Itovich, he does a pretty good job here. In January 2023, the write-up says this, that many have been critical of Filip Mesar's OHL production. Coming from a far superior league, it was somewhat a surprise when the Canadiens opted to send Mesar down to Kitchener rather than playing him in the AHL. He was exactly a point per game earlier and recently had broken a 5-game pointless streak. However, it must be considered that Mesar is still adapting to North American ice and that the Kitchener Rangers are far from a competitive team. His interior-driven play is starting to develop on smaller ice, but he still has a long way to go until he becomes an effective middle-six NHL winger. He has very impressive speed, which looks even more elite on this smaller ice, and as he grows stronger, his stride is only bound to improve. He has great hockey IQ, but there are question marks about defensive awareness becoming inherently obvious on an offense-first Kitchener team. There's a lot to like with Mesar, whose points definitely don't tell the whole story. However, even though this 2023 January report is still giving him the benefit of the doubt, the June 2023 report goes out there and retcons that a bit. Mesar disappointed in the playoffs this season with only 4 points in 9 games. While the Rangers did sweep the first seed Windsor Spitfires, Mesar was left in a bottom 6 role that didn't do too much for him. There's a lot of work Mesar has to put in to become an NHLer, but the speed and craftiness of his game are still compelling. The Habs management should throw him a new situation in Laval next year or give him another shot at Major Junior. And so, heading into 23-24, it's going to be intriguing to see how Mesar is able to bounce back here. Because just looking at the raw hard points, you could say, hey, the guy was pretty good in the Slovak Pro League, so why, when he comes to Canadian Major Junior, he's producing only at a point per game? He's not dominating like other guys who are eligible for drafts afterwards are dominating. This guy's a point per game player, but he was a first-round pick last year. He's not even a draft eligible this year. What's going on here? And so, when it comes to Mesar, there are some adjustments that are going to have to be made here. He's going to have to improve his point production, get a little bit more comfortable, a little bit quicker, if he really wants to earn back the goodwill he had accrued from last season's draft and beyond. There's a lot of potential here with Filip Mesar to become a two-way capable, playmaking right-wing guy in the Canadiens' middle six, maybe even playing with Juraj Slafkovsky on a line. Who really knows? But from what we had seen last year in the OHL, that development has not taken itself in full stride just yet. So for now, obviously it's fine. It's only been 1 year. There still is a lot more time here for Mesar to become good. But 1 year later after the draft, things don't look as good as we thought they would have been or we hoped they would have been from last year to now. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Where does Mesar go from here? How do you see his 23-24 developing? Does he go back to Major Junior? And if so, how does he do? If he plays in Laval, how does he do there? Let me know your thoughts and opinions about this guy in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.